IT person should be. Okay, are you ready, Susan?
Sure.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular board meeting for November 28th, 2018, Pullman School District. We'll begin as we always do with our flag salute. Mandy, could I ask you to read it? Okay. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Superintendent Maxwell, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
There are no changes to tonight's agenda, but I did want to point out for the audience that if you were looking at last Friday's board packet, there may be some items that you do not see on tonight's packet. Some of those were tabled and scheduled to be covered at a future board work session. So if they're wondering why there's a difference, some of those items we're not quite ready to report on.
Okay, thank you. I would now entertain a motion regarding the agenda.
I move passing the agenda. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve tonight's agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we move on to reports, correspondence, and program, beginning with our PHS ASB report delivered by Mandy Raveno.
Well, nice to see you all.
Nice to see you.
Hello.
So to start, I'll talk about some of the things that ASB and leadership are doing. December is going to be a pretty fun month. The leadership class is planning a visit to Bishop Place to visit for the holiday winter season. So that'll come up in the next couple weeks. We're also planning the Polar Express pajama party, which we put on for our kindergarten through 5th graders, where they can come up, do little fun activities with the high schoolers, and then we end by watching the Polar Express and having hot chocolate. And then we're also having the snowball on December 15th from 8 to 10:30 in our gym, and that'll just be a semi-formal for the students to come and hang out at the school before we head off to break. And then I also wanted to mention me and my fellow student Karen Shinkoff had the opportunity to go to the WASDA conference with most of you guys, and just brief summary of what we got to do while we were there. We got to go to different breakout sessions put on by other school boards and other schools and communities and see how they're running their schools and how they're trying to get new things passed and changed. And me and Karen were able to take a lot of information back with us to our classes and our other teachers, and we're really looking forward to the work session with you guys to talk about it and put all of our ideas down and really pull the most we got out of that conference. So thank you for the opportunity to go with you guys. That's all I have to report, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Yes, it was certainly a pleasure having the students with us this year.
Good.
I really appreciated their perspective on several of
Yes.
those presentations too.
Yes.
I agree. Mandy, I just want to know when the lip sync contest is, or did I miss it? Okay.
Are you practicing, Roberta?
Well, just in case Diane and I are working on it.
Oh, I'm coming.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to our board reports, beginning with Director Weed.
We have a legislative representative of WASDA, real life official WASDA.
He stole my only thing to report.
Well, he got elected and everything.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that WASDA's positions and priorities are on the WASDA's web page, and this is looking forward to the 2019 legislative session that is coming up, and it will list our priorities. And Nathan and I were at the conference in the fall where we prioritized and voted and did all of that, and so it's kind of interesting, and it's a way to look at what school districts around the state are thinking are important and what we want to be the main thrust of information to our legislators to be. So I would check that out, and I'm sure Nathan has much more. Don't you have more? You have more.
Well, I haven't really done anything yet, so I don't have too much more.
You haven't read your emails yet.
No,
right?
not all of them.
Yeah. It's fun. I mean, it's like the Pullman School Board is taking over WASDA between
With District Area 10.
resolutions, yeah. And
Represent
Allison
DA10.
is on the nominations committee and everything else. It's good. Couldn't be any further away from Olympia, but it's good to be involved.
Did the resolutions committee do anything remarkable?
Everything we do is remarkable.
Okay, I don't know much about that committee. So I was-
It's an interesting committee in that half the people on the committee don't really know much about what they're doing.
Oh, okay.
A lot of it is wordsmithing. WASDA has legislative positions and they have permanent positions. And the resolutions committee is what reviews and works on and wordsmiths the permanent positions. So every year we take a section of all the positions and try to make sure they're up with the correct laws and the wording is current with the language that's going around at the time and that sort of thing. So we meet 4 times a year and do that. One thing we did do last year, and I was the alternate and never got called on, we worked with the legislative committee and realigned all the positions and the legislative priorities into one kind of series of numbering so that when you see one on the permanent position, you can go to a similar number and find it. It used to be willy-nilly, but so we're trying to realign everything so that they're actually like work together. So we've been working on that for a year and a half, and we'll continue working on it.
Thank you, that helps
There,
me.
okay.
Because that committee, it's like you see the name
Oh, it
and
took
you
me
wonder what did they
forever.
do?
What am I doing here? Why am I here? Originally, it was just, I thought, just wordsmithing, but they're now trying to go into depth on it. With Tim, the new executive director and stuff, is much more in depth and wanting to know what really is happening.
He's got a lot of energy.
I like Tim a lot. He's cool.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Director Roberts?
So first, I got elected to the legislative committee.
Why are you looking at me?
Because I have something to tell you in a second. So no, I'm really looking forward to kind of being involved in the legislative activities of WASDA. I'm not really sure what's going on with it, but I wanted to know from you guys how much you wanted to be informed, or if there was a method that we could, because I know that during the committee briefing that we had, they said that it was really helpful to, like when there were policy issues, to kind of discuss them with the peers, just because to get input and stuff. And so, but I also don't know about Open Public Meetings Act, like at what point, if I can solicit feedback from all 4 of you on something, I think that's a violation. And so how do you think it would be best to, and we can talk about this later too, but just think about how much you want to be involved or how it would be best to do that, I would say. And we can talk later too if you'd like. And I just wanted to say also, you provided wonderful information, Susan, and this is why we rely on you so much for everything.
No, you're not supposed to rely on
And
me.
that's the end of my
I'm
board
old.
report. No, you're old and full of knowledge. It's
No,
so
no,
fun.
I'm forgetful.
No. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
What he was saying though, our work sessions are also official meetings, kind of, so you can.
Okay, that's a good
yeah,
idea.
Probably present during a board report, things to talk about, and then talk about it at
Okay.
the work sessions. Oh, God, I know, thinking all the time, that's.
But a good idea would be to introduce those as discussion items and not as definitive action items.
Exactly,
With
yeah,
some-
just things to talk about.
Yeah.
No action.
Thanks.
Okay, Director Everman.
It seems like a long time, but I was here in November. Veterans Day Assembly at Franklin, I attended that this year. So usually I go to the high school one, but I was asked to go to the Franklin school and make a presentation. So 450 kids, and they were quiet. So they've never been that quiet before in their lives. So we talked about submarines, but actually they asked what I did on the submarine. I said I ate a lot of cheese and bologna sandwiches, and they couldn't believe that. Then they asked me what I did for fun, and I said I had popcorn and root beer and movie. And they couldn't believe that either. So they all want to join the Navy now.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. And
You're
Director King.
I think most everything that I had on my list has been covered already, aside from at WASDA. I also want to mention that I thought it was really cool that the Pullman district had 2 sessions. Roberta and Susan had one on transparent bargaining, which I thought was very well attended, and people had lots of questions. And then also there was one put on by Linda Sagan about the food pantry, which I thought it was nice to have that representation as well.
Thank you. I have no report, so let's move on to the
Oh,
superintendent.
I forgot something.
Oh, by all means.
Pullman High School booster, we've been ringing it all over the radio, and I forget. See, I forget. Pullman High School boosters Christmas tree sales, they're working, Mr. Packer this year decided no more old Christmas trees, so Pullman Building Supply has stepped up in a big way, which they do for any community thing. They're amazing. But the trees are there. This booster the kids are all selling the trees, and it's from 3 to 6 weeknights, and then in the afternoon, Saturday and Sunday as well, Joe, right? Okay, yeah,
Yes.
during the day.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And it's every club. Danielle's been listing them off on the radio trying to do it, but it's not just football and that sort of thing. It's all the little clubs and activities, and everybody is pitching in, so hopefully people will pitch in and get their trees.
I got mine already.
Good job. From
It's my little
Pullman.
part. From Pullman Building Supply, absolutely.
Is it up?
Yeah,
Decorated?
of course.
Way to go.
I got little kids. That's what they.
Oh, yeah, of course you do. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. No, that's perfect. Okay, superintendent's report.
So I would be remiss if I didn't remember to mention the pancake breakfast
Oh, that's right.
happening
Kiwanis.
Saturday, so the biggest event in Pullman ever, so at LMS. So please make sure you have your tickets for the pancake breakfast. So that's put on by Kiwanis and benefits all the key clubs. And,
This coming Saturday.
This coming Saturday.
Where do we
That's
get
correct.
tickets?
You can buy them at the door, or any Kiwanian member should have tickets. So.
Nails, Flowers, and Gifts in Pullman also has.
That's true, yes. So, big event. Many of our choirs, bands, orchestra will also be performing. So, please check it out if you have the opportunity. It's a very, very fun time for a great cause. Also, wrapping up about now, most likely, is our parent partnership meeting, first one for this year. And so I was helping set that up before I came to school board, and there were probably 12 or 13 parents, community members present, along with several of our teachers and counselors. So Megan Atani and Megan Yen, a parent, were co-facilitating that first meeting, and they have 2 other meetings scheduled this year already. So that's off to a great start. Also, along with talking about parent resources and special education, just to make you aware that every year the U.S. Department of Education has an annual determination for school districts that are in compliance with special ed requirements, and this purpose was to notify you of your determination made for your district based on performance's 17-18 school year, and we were in compliance in every area. So I've asked Shannon to eventually put this on the website. She may have done that already or not, but I will pass that down. You can take a look. So it's very, very hard to meet all areas of expectation, by the way. Most districts do not. So I wanted to make a note of that. Also, if you did not see in your email the Teaching and Learning newsletter November edition, I did print one off, and I'll be happy to pass that. But very nice job from Roberta's department there. That they continue to try to outshine my newsletters every month. So they're stepping up their game. So I'll have to prepare something special for December. So they make a point to point out my newsletters compared to theirs. So also, I just wanted to report on again. Thank you for the time to participate in WSU Pullman School District's partnership with the school district Nishiomiya in Japan. So I spent about a week and a half traveling with the WSU delegation. This has been a 31-year partnership with Nishiomiya, and about every 3 years they come here or we go there. And this has been a great opportunity to visit both elementary, junior highs, and high schools in Japan, have great cultural exchange of information. I did do 2 presentations on transitioning elementary to middle school. That's an area of focus that they're really interested in. Some of the other presentations were bullying harassment, for example. They have very similar concerns in Japan. One interesting thing, though, is cell phones are not allowed in their schools because of the bullying and harassment. And so I found that to be interesting, and they still have rotary dial phones that the kids can use if they need to get a hold of their parents.
You have to remember the number, though.
So some very interesting differences. I'll put together some photos so you can take a look at that. I appreciate WSU picking up the bill for that travel. So I also spent 3 days in Okinawa visiting Okisho High School. It's a private high school in Okinawa in the city of Naha. And they are interested in doing a student exchange with Pullman High School. Oshio has several student exchange agreements with other high schools in other states. They are interested in trying maybe a 2-week or 3-week student exchange. Right now it would look like the majority of the cost would be the travel. Other than that, Okisho has dormitories as part of their private high school, or students can do a homestay. Similar to when their students come here, they either stay at the dorms at WSU or they stay at homes.
We were host families for many times with the Kasai kids when they would come in,
Right.
junior high, mainly high school and junior high, and it's a great experience.
And we've hosted students as well from Kasai, and
Yeah.
it's a great experience. So I'm really interested in talking a little bit more in the future with the school board about that possible opportunity. They're very excited. Their superintendent is planning on coming here in April, and would like maybe to do a presentation to the parents, or if school board members were available, kind of go over their high school and talk about that relationship. It's interesting, their mission and goal for their students is global peace. And so they are really into cultural exchanges. They do year-long cultural student exchange programs with students, and I visit with students from Malaysia, Germany, and Finland who are currently there, and have an opportunity to talk about their experience there. 2 of them were staying with families, 1 of them was staying in the dorm. And we have also had teachers teach over there, and as well as their teachers come here for intensive program in the summer to learn English, and that's a real focus of how to improve students' English. So it was a great opportunity. I feel very blessed at the facilities we have. If you ever visit a school in Japan, you're going to see it's very basic, all concrete, chalkboards, a laptop, and maybe a monitor, and that's the extent of technology, not what you would expect. So anyway, very thankful and appreciate that opportunity. Lastly, my report is Kamiak construction update. Things are moving along. We had a slight hiccup. They went to do some flow testing and backflow testing and realized that one of our sewer connections was never completed. And so no damage was done other than it was caught in a grease trap, and we were just doing some testing. So Joe and I have been spending several days in emails trying to figure out how we're going to get connected and who's going to do the work, and we will figure it out. It'll get done, but that was a little bit of a hiccup. So 4 out of the 5 were hooked up, but 1 was not. So that happens in construction sometimes, but everything is on schedule, moving along. We have our construction meeting tomorrow, so hopefully we'll get a resolution to that little hiccup. But That's not going to hold up anything. It's just an opportunity to facilitate another meeting.
That's what you wanted.
Just what I needed.
Okay. All
And that
right.
concludes my report.
All right,
That's a
thank
nice
you.
welcome home for you.
Yes.
Yes, there's nothing like a backed up sewer to come home to. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Just like home sometimes.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda is our budget year-end report presented by Fiscal Manager Diane Hodge.
Okay, so every year we have to present our fiscal year-end report once we close the books for 2017-18, which we've done. OSPI hasn't approved it yet, but we're waiting on that. Did you want to pull up the PowerPoint?
Those aren't yours, are they? Here, here I can pull it.
Did you get it? There you go.
There you go. Sorry.
That's okay.
You want me to advance it, or I can advance it for you?
Okay, go ahead. So this is our 10-year enrollment. I always like to show our 10-year history of enrollment. As you can see, it has just skyrocketed significantly. And we ended 2017-18 with 2,817 students. We had budgeted 2,770. So that's 30, we ended up with 39 more than we had actually budgeted. So again, this year we actually budgeted more because we wanted to try and stay on track with actual. And because of our 10-year history, we always have seen an increase in the enrollment. So we budgeted 2845. We're still coming in at about 2793 right now. So after looking at this 10-year history, you know, I still stand firm on the way that we budgeted our enrollment based upon this 10-year history. I would do it again based upon this 10-year history. So, you know, from the 39 that we were under last year, we just went 22 above that this year. And, you know, we still fell short this year. So, but as you can see, it has increased significantly over 10 years. So our general fund, our beginning fund balance was about 4.8 million, just a little shy of 4.8 million. We had 32 million in revenue. We spent almost 30 million. We had no transfers this year and in 17-18, and we ended with just right under $7 million as an ending fund balance, which is about a 23%, which is about right where we want to be opening CAMIAC, and especially with the new collective bargaining agreements. So our revenue, as you can tell, between 16-17 and 17-18, our local taxes, which is our maintenance and operations levy, is just about the same. We increased a little bit in local non-tax. Our apportionment went up, of course. Our state special, which is special ed transportation, went up about 700,000. Our federal special ed title didn't increase too much, and our other sources, which are district grants and stuff, stayed about the same. So most of our money, 63%, comes from our state general purpose, which is our regular state apportionment. And then we have our state special purpose, which is again our special ed, LAP, etc., which came in at 13%, local taxes 17%, which is our second highest revenue, and then just less than 1% from other entities and other school districts. And the majority of our expenditures go to regular instruction, classroom instruction, which is 54%. Our support services is 26%. And I do want to point out, because people see support services as administration, but support services is custodial, food service, maintenance, transportation. So that 7.7 and kind of eats up that 26%. Special education was 3.2 million. And just our other compensatory programs are Title LAP, or our LAP. And then VOC was 1.3 million. And our expenditures by activity, again, instruction was 71%. Pupil transportation was 4%. District support 5%, food service 3%, and instructional support was 3%. Again, certificated salaries take up the majority of our expenditures at 40%, classified salaries 16%. Our next highest expenditures is our employee benefits and taxes at 24%, supplies and instruction 9%, and purchase services 10%, which are our contract services. So our total fund balance of the 6.991 million, or yeah, 6,991,000. We had our food service inventory, which we have to put in a restricted fund, of 9,901. Our unassigned fund balance is 4.8 million, almost 4.9. And then our 7% minimum fund balance, which is our new policy, is almost 2.1 million, but our payroll is actually running 2.3 to 2.4 million. So we're still a little bit under 1 month's payroll, but at least we're at the 7% this year. And capital projects, which is our technology levy, we had the high school this year, CAMIAC. Our beginning fund balance was 23 million. We had revenues of 771,000, which is the remainder of the state match for the Pullman High School and our tech levy. Our expenditures were almost 16 million due to CAMIAC, which leaves us with an ending fund balance of 8.1 million. Our debt service fund, which of course services our bonds for our schools, our new schools, the high school, Lincoln, and CAMIAC. So our beginning fund balance was just right under 2.4 million. Revenues, we had 6.2 million, and our expenditures were just right under 6 million. So we have an ending fund balance of about 2.7 million. Transportation vehicle, the services are buses. Started with 371,000. We had 107,000 in revenue, which is our depreciation that we get from the buses that are still on the depreciation schedule. We had 19,000 in expenditures, and our ending fund balance is 458,000. ASB, beginning fund balance 255,000, revenues 360,000, expenditures 324, and our ending fund balance of 291. So that's all from fundraisers. It's all student-run activities, mostly at the high school and at the middle school. And this is just ending fund balance by school, what they ended with. The elementary schools, of course, are going to be for 5th grade camp. And so that's where they ended. And this is required to be put on our website every year, too, by the 31st of August.
You know what happened to Jefferson's?
They just had a lot more expenditures. They probably buy more supplies. They have more kids, so they're buying more supplies.
Okay, nothing in particular though stood
Nope.
out?
Nope. Any questions?
I already asked those.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
All right. The next part of the agenda is the visitor section. This part of the agenda is for anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or as a member of a group. Visitors addressing the board will go to the microphone and state their name and address prior to presenting their information. The board will listen and may offer clarification, but will not discuss the topic at this time. The board may consider moving the topic presented to a future meeting date as a discussion item. Please keep your comments civil and respectful and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Would anyone care to address the board this evening? Okay. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. To expedite business at a board meeting, the board approves the use of a consent agenda, which includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by a member of the board and voted on separately. The remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. Tonight's consent agenda consists of minutes, budget status report, warrants, PAC-12 donation, overnight field trip request, new ASB club, ASB fundraisers, transfer request, professional and personal services contracts report, and personnel report. And I would now entertain a motion regarding the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the consent agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to action items. These action items have been previously discussed by the board. That was clear back a while ago.
Early November.
Is that right?
The
I thought
fourth,
this was-
wasn't it?
Yeah, this is the first board meeting in November.
We had a work session,
Right, but not, okay.
but this is the first board
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah. Okay. And so the board will now take action. So the first action item up this evening is the 2018-19 school improvement plans presented by Superintendent Maxwell.
Thank you. And this was our board work session for November. If you recall, each of the building principals presented their school improvement plans, and the board had an opportunity to ask questions, review those plans. So I won't spend a whole lot of time, but you've had the opportunity to take a look at these on November 7th, give some feedback, and the plans are up and running, and in the end of the year, they'll be back to report on their progress.
I move that we approve the 18-19 school improvement plans.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2018-19 school improvement plans as presented. Is there any further discussion?
I thought the reports were unusually good this year. Is it possible that the board could send me the polls? Thank you, note?
Yes, we could.
Because I thought everything ran smoothly. So
Thanks, Jim.
maybe just
Great thought.
encourage them to continue doing that in the future.
And I will make a note, one of the things we've tried to do is standardize that plan. And so I think if you notice, it really helped, and we'll continue to refine that. It was a little, we're not there 100%, but having new folks in there, but we're working on it, and I also appreciated them including those opportunity gaps and addressing those specifically in the plans, and so that's something we've been talking about. So I will be happy to send them a note.
What did everyone think of the format of having all those in a work session rather than a series of evening board meetings?
I think maybe that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, boom. I mean, I liked how, because in your mind you can kind of compare, you know, and see trends and like things that everybody's working on and things that just particular schools are working on. I mean, I appreciated it.
I liked it as well.
I'd personally like to continue that
Yeah.
in next year and having it at a board work session.
It also felt a little bit more personable and comfortable sitting together rather than having them, you know, have
walk
to,
up to the-
Yeah.
go up to the podium and.
The drawback, I think, is that it is less public, so somebody who watches, I don't know what the audience of a school board meeting is, but if somebody wanted to, they would miss that opportunity of seeing it actually presented.
Could we do it in this room next time?
We have it recorded.
And record it?
We could.
That was my only, not a complaint, but concern was the room sitting in those chairs.
Teddy chairs, yeah.
Tiny
Little
chairs,
kindergarten
tiny
chairs.
tables,
Second
and-
grade chairs.
I mean, I don't mind doing that, but when you're sitting there for 2 hours,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could arrange it to have it here next year.
Because I also like, you know, because isolating it to a work session prevents the, you know, the march of the schedule from making me forget everything that I just heard. Because honestly, like when you get a bunch of presentations and then a bunch of discussion items and a bunch of other things, it's kind of hard to draw back to what I was thinking. Whereas at the work session, I got time to like think and kind of hear everything and retain it and then leave and kind of let it melt, you know.
So do it in a work session, but do it at the high school. Consider recording it.
Making a note.
Excellent. Okay, so is there any more discussion? Okay, and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the school improvement plans are approved.
Thank you.
Our second action item this evening is policy and procedure 3131.
Thank you very much. So this again was presented at that November 7th board work session, and let me find a clean copy because if I show the markup one, I'm going to get dizzy. Well, this is our existing. Help very much. That. That was the right one.
Lots of options there.
There are a lot of options, so.
Back up.
There we go. No, that's not it either. All right. We'll have to use the markup one. Sorry, I thought we had a clean one in there. Yeah, but that's the markup one. This one's the procedure. I was looking at the.
And that's, it looks like they're the same. That's what we want, right, is the procedure?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Because the policy didn't really,
Yeah, policy didn't really change.
Yeah.
There we go.
okay.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. So this was presented at the November 7th board work session. You've had an opportunity to have some great conversation about this. I appreciate the help from our audience members as well who contributed to this joint effort, so thank you very much. So again, what we tried to do was incorporate a lot of research that was completed and submitted and discussion from our community members. So the main thing is we do have a clause in here for the 2019-20 school year only. Students impacted by the newly established elementary attendance areas will be given first priority when requesting and submitting a transfer application. I do want to note that we did move this up earlier than the draft. We felt that, and this was confirmed, I think, from feedback from our audience, that if people are going to think about requesting it, they already know that. So we're going to move that up. That would really help with our staffing and timeline of looking at the numbers. I will add, in addition to this, we have received numbers from Flow Analytics and roll-up numbers for the student populations at the schools. We're going to go through it again with a fine-tooth comb. We want to make sure those numbers are completely accurate. But this will give us a great opportunity to get this done and wrapped up and take a look at staffing and approving these things earlier in the school year. So we really appreciate that. We did take a look at the priority, and this was the other major change. Students who attended school and moved to a new attendance area but would like to remain would be first. Students who previously attended the school on an in-district transfer would be second. Siblings who attend the school would be third priority. New in-district transfer requests would be 4. And then out-of-district, what we call choice students, would be 5th. The other major change I'll note is that once a student is approved into that school, they would remain at that school, unless, of course, parents opted to move them out. And we wouldn't annually have to reapply. So that'll help with our paperwork. That'll help with staffing in the future as well. So those are the major changes that were made to this proposed procedure.
Do you want to go through the form?
Sure. I can go through the form if you'd like as
May
well.
I ask, so the January 14th period, we're going to advertise that? I mean, do we have a plan for making sure everyone?
Yeah,
Oh, asking
well-
you, Shannon. Sweet, thank you very
We're
much.
going to advertise that, yeah. It wouldn't do us much good if we didn't advertise that. So we'll make sure we probably over-advertise that particular.
We're having
And so you can see here on the form, we put right at the top the time period, January 14th through the 28th. They'll be considered and notified prior to the 28th. I think we'll be able to notify people well before the 28th, but we put it in as just a backup. But now that we have a lot of our data, we're really going to push to make sure that data is correct and work on our staffing. If we can't accommodate all requests, there'd be a lottery process. As you know, we've moved to a standardized lottery process, which is using a program that's online. We also advertise when that lottery will happen, so folks can come to the district office and observe that lottery. And Shannon conducts the lottery. You'll see that we've also added, has a student previously attended the school to which a student is requesting a transfer? That is new. Telephone, we don't put cell or work anymore. We just say telephone 1, telephone 2. The other change, again, student previously attended the school. The other 4 are all currently on the form. Notices and acknowledgments, I believe, are all the same. And I think the other thing that we took out is that they don't have to apply every year. Once you're approved, you're in our numbers, you stay in that school.
There'll still be those forms at the end of each school year they give where you say if you plan to.
Yes, we're still gonna, yeah. And what we're gonna do is create a database of students that were approved, so we know if for some reason there's some reason why we'd have to move students out of the school for whatever emergency might be, we would have a list of who was granted and were they priority 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. I'm just glad we're not Paradise, California School District. They have no schools left whatsoever.
Dear Lord, I know.
Their high school survived.
Did the high school survive?
The high school survived. They did nothing else.
Nothing else. So, any questions on the form?
No, I mean, honestly, as long as everyone else is good, I would motion that we approve 3131, 3131P, and 3131F.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve 3131 policy, procedure, and form. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for all your hard work on this, too, and your research, the hours you put in on it. It helped us. Appreciate it. It's always good to get community input.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's good, too.
All right. Next, we'll move on to our discussion items. We have quite a few tonight. We'll begin with Policy 2190, Highly Capable Programs, presented by Assistant Superintendent Kramer.
My notes for this are back on my desk at the office. I know right where they are. So I arrived here without them. So this is not the right one, Bob.
I gotta back out each time. Highly capable. So
Yep, that
which
one right
You
there.
want that one?
That one's great.
Okay.
Yeah. So recently the state has adjusted expectations for districts related to highly capable program to make sure that we are considering all of our children to be for potential to become eligible. The state data indicated that represented groups were not always equally participants in the program. And so in Pullman, our numbers according to race are appropriate. They align with the number of kiddos in the general population. But our numbers are not quite where they should be related to low income. And that's the piece in the policy change that the state has really emphasized to make sure that we consider multiple data sources to really look at could we have more low-income kids become eligible to participate in our programs. And it's not to say that we don't have any. It's just that we should have more. And so this policy speaks to that. It has provided the introduction is, I think, is better than what it has been in the past. And then you can see that later on, it identifies low income as being one of them. It also speaks to some of the multiple objective criteria, multiple different kinds of measures that we can use. We cannot solely rely on teacher recommendation or grades. And we haven't ever done that, but this, in all likelihood, it was a problem in some places, and so that's been identified. So that's the synopsis of this particular policy change. And I can tell you that we've already been required to submit as a part of our highly capable program that we presented to the board that included these changes, and we had to address what data we would consider to increase the number of low-income kiddos that participate in the program.
What kind of strategies do you think we can use to do that?
The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our initial look at the data to identify students who are low income and look at the top our top quartile of those kiddos. So we're going to start there, and then continue to then seek more information from teachers and just go deeper and deeper. So I'm confident we're missing kids, not intentionally, but because of the way that we establish a MAP score, and that might not be the only way to identify kids. So we're looking deeper at that. We're starting with that MAP score though, and looking at specifically to disaggregating the population of students.
Any other questions?
Interesting. It's just difficult because, I mean, obviously, there are differences in testing from different groups, but how you settle on who gets in and who doesn't that way without opening a can of worms to.
How many times a year is the highly capable committee meeting?
The highly capable committee meets about every other month. So I would say 3 to 4 times a year. Okay. And more frequently if we need to.
And did they review this before we?
Not the policy, but they know of the new requirements because we've already put those into the plan. Okay. Yeah, they're very active, and it's a great committee. It's a good group to work with.
Good. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Roberta.
Next, policy 3235, protection of student information, presented by Superintendent Maxwell.
Well, I clicked the wrong item.
He's playing around with the computer.
Sorry about that. I don't like using this one. There you go. You can do it.
I don't know. I missed it.
He's got to learn somehow.
No, I clicked up here.
Completely different year.
No. That's why I don't like this version of it. All right, so I'm up next. So we have the protection of student personal information. So So again, this is a new WASA policy classified and recognizes that all negotiated contracts and online terms of use agreements with school service providers align with the student user privacy and education rights called the Super Act, codified in RCW Chapter 28A 604. So this is encouraged, not essential by WASDA. It is something that Garen and I have continuous conversations of when we look at user service agreements. We're really trying to make sure that as much as possible we can clarify that users are data mining student data, information, personal information, and this is what that Super Act tries to deal with. So this is something that we're currently doing anyway. But it's becoming more and more of an issue across the country and in the state of Washington. So it's not essential. It is encouraged. It is part of our current practice.
I noticed the procedure was really in-depth.
I can
No, that's okay.
I can show you the procedure because it is way in depth if you'd like. It's that procedure is constantly changing because of constant things that we run into with technology.
Have we had any instances in the district of people using student data to aggregate it for things? I mean,
not that we know of.
And like for flow analytics and stuff, I mean, are they already pre-approved by the state? I mean, is there some sort of process they go through to say, I mean, or is it something we have to
it's something that the state has some acts in there, but ultimately the state's going to say it's you who are responsible to make sure those things. But it is something that we do look over those service terms agreements pretty carefully. One of the things that we're still looking at, especially with Google, is Google will not guarantee that they don't harvest data.
Yeah, they totally do.
Wow.
So that's a real issue that I struggle with, our technology department struggles with, whereas Microsoft will give us in writing that they don't collect student data. So, but this is something that I think we're going to see more and more policy and procedure changes. This is going to kind of turn into the 2410 every year. We're going to take a look at it several times, most likely.
Are students allowed to log into the Wi-Fi, like with cell phones or computers?
They can log on to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's.
But we do have filters. We also, with YouTube, it's restricted. Even staff members have to request to go to certain sites, and then it's only set up for a certain time period.
Yeah, I think this becomes really problematic with the Wi-Fi, because at that point, like, you can't really control, I mean, like what they're Googling, for instance, and it's always going to take their IP address and then just map it.
If they're using any of ours, they can't get anywhere with it, but with their own, they could.
And is this policy concerned with personal devices used on school property, on school infrastructure, or is it just school computers?
This is just when we sign an agreement for a certain app or a certain online tool or curriculum. A lot of the curriculums have online components now. And so one of the things that I always look at is, okay, are you going to harvest student data?
Are you going to take all their homework assignments or something and aggregate them?
Or their names or, whatever. So this is, even though it's encouraged, my recommendation would be that we should probably have a policy on it. So.
Thanks, Bob.
But it's one. I would also take a look at the policy legal news notes to this one. If you haven't had an opportunity, I would really read that article as well. We're doing these things right now, but we don't have a policy. We kind of have a procedure in place, but it is something that sometimes I worry about.
Yeah, with good reason. I mean, there's lots of...
Yeah, just your own personal use when you get on the web. People are tracking and collecting your data, so.
And this is, sorry to belabor this, can students download apps and other things onto school devices? I mean, are they given, so it's all locked down through IT? Okay. So this is all professional services and
This mainly,
main stuff.
you know, when we go out and buy something, what they want to say is, how are you ensuring that whoever you're buying that service from, they're not collecting data?
And then can teachers do that? Like as far as purchase an app for in-classroom use or anything
Unless it
without
goes
going
through the CAC.
Cool.
And we have a list of approved apps. Unless it's already been approved, then it's on our approved app list, then they can
Okay,
use it. Well, we already purchased it,
gotcha.
so. But all apps should go through the CAC. That would be my recommendation.
I know, just anecdotally, I read about a flashlight app that was free on the iPhone that harvested your location data and your walking patterns. And so basically you would download this free flashlight and it would constantly send your location and like behaviors and all this other stuff to the app developer, which is some Chinese company. No idea what they were doing with it, but it's
Just like
Brings to mind.
when you use Google, you know, you probably logged on and all of a sudden you see these ads and it's probably something similar to something you were searching for at some time. So they know what you're looking at, what you're interested in. So, but when we purchase services, we do, Garen, I always have Garen read over the contracts as well and ask him, you know, are they in compliance? So it's something he's also worried about quite a bit, so.
thanks for tolerating all my questions.
No, it's an important one, so that one I would take a look at. All
All
right,
right. Any other questions?
all right, Diane?
Okay. Yeah, then let's move on to policy 50/50, contracts.
Not intentional, is it? 50/50?
Oh.
Okay, so this is a new WASDA policy that we do not currently have in place, and it's classified as essential. And it is clarification on certificated, classified, supplemental consultant, and paraeducator contracts. The contracts will not exceed 1 year, and the language details the new laws regarding paraeducator requirements. So it discusses certificated staff for a period not to exceed 1 year, provisional contracts, the first, second, and third year certificated teaching staff, and other non-supervisory certificated staff who are provisional employees subject to non-renewable employment as provided by law. And then the paraeducator requirements, they have to have earned 72 credits or 48 semester credits at an institution of higher learning, obtained at least an associate's degree or received a passing grade on the education testing service paraeducator assessment test. We currently do all of these things. We just don't have a policy in place, you know, that describes anything regarding contracts. So this would be new for Pullman School District.
Okay, I'm so confused on this one. If we have an agreement with the union bargaining for a 3-year contract, how does this affect it if it's just a 1-year contract?
That's a collective bargaining agreement. This is teacher contracts
Their
that they
actual-
sign, like
Just
salary
it's
placement
just
agreements.
So the collective bargaining agreement will apply for 3 years to
Yeah, the
this-
collective-
1-year contract
Yeah.
that each teacher
Yeah,
signs.
Yeah.
that'd be a way to phrase it,
Yeah,
Susan.
All right.
so the collective bargaining agreement that we have with the unions, that's their collective bargaining agreement that addresses everything. This is actually a teacher's contract that they're gonna sign what their
Personnel.
salary is.
I know everybody
Yeah.
has to sign a contract, so
Yeah.
this is just for 1 year on all of those?
Yes.
Okay.
And do they have to re-sign every year then?
And
Yeah.
what happens if you don't want them to resign?
You have to
Is that possible?
You have
I
to
mean-
notify them by May 15th.
There's, all right. You don't have to, so how does that work? Is this new? Then is that a new policy as compared to, like, in the past, there's always been, I mean, it's so expensive to not rehire a teacher, to
If you're,
eliminate it, I don't know how to nicely put it.
no,
Get
all
rid
this is language that we've had in other places. It hasn't all been nice in one spot. So it used to be provisional was only 2 years, and then I think, 5 years
I
ago,
want to say about 5 years ago.
they added a third year. So what it means is the first year of a teacher, second year of a teacher, third year, if they're not performing to what you think the standard should be, then you can non-renew their contract.
Yeah. So it's basically like a probation.
It's a probationary period, yeah. They have a 3-year probationary period.
Okay.
And is that something we were already doing?
We've already been doing it, it's state law.
They're just putting it into a policy.
They're just putting it into a policy. We've always followed the policy, the probationary period. After 3 years, then they receive tenure. And then that's when it becomes a little more difficult then that has to go through an evaluation process.
And the paraeducator thing is new this year, even though we were trying to get in compliance with it last year. So,
All the new requirements,
Yeah.
yeah, I know that they were different.
yeah.
Okay.
Do paraeducators receive tenure after several
No.
years too?
And
They're on-
paraeducators are year to year.
Yeah, they're on salary placement agreements.
What happens if you don't renew a paraeducator? Is it the same as it is with a teacher?
Same.
You know, all that money and that you have to do with the union?
It just stops.
So because there's no tenure, then there's no
Right.
like corrective action period or
No.
anything.
Do you have
So-
to notify them by May 15th?
You have to theirs is not May 15th, theirs is a different date.
I want to say, well, we haven't come to an agreement on that yet.
Oh, yeah. Typically, it's by June 30th,
Yeah.
or the last school day, depending on what your collective bargaining says.
So all of our paraeducators have met these requirements?
Yes, and they've had to meet
And
these.
we're actually audited on that, so they have to, yeah.
Okay.
This
and-
kicked in during the No Child Left Behind era.
Okay. Thank you.
And is this, sorry, one more question, and this is really for Bob, so Jan, you can
Okay.
go.
You can go.
No, not to dismiss you. You did a great job. No, I just was curious, do these requirements, like even people that just help out on the playground or that we hire to do bus duty, or do they all have to maintain the credits and the paraeducator apprenticeship and, okay.
They do, because most of them we have very few people that just do crossing guard or just do
Like playground.
playground. They're usually connected with hours to be a paraeducator, and you have to meet those minimum competencies. So and if we had to move somebody because of funding or number of students or enrollment, we want to make sure that those people can transfer to other positions.
So it's to allow them to be more flexible,
Right.
really? Okay.
So our requirement is you have to meet this no matter what. Then that way you're able to utilize the staffing in any position.
Thank you.
No, that's a good question.
So we said this was a new WASDA policy, or it's new for the Pullman School District to incorporate this?
It's both.
Oh, okay. Is this based on what happened last year? Bargaining?
No,
Because it seems like this would clarify a lot of things that we were dealing with last year,
yeah,
for the last 2 years.
yeah, it's been practiced for years, with the exception of the paraeducators and the provisional for 2 to 3 years. It's been practiced for years. The paraeducator also is tied to Title I, so you cannot, unless you have to meet those requirements, you cannot teach as a paraeducator in Title I. And so we were actually audited on that last year.
It seems to me this clarified probationary period.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's,
I think they did it to make it easier for people to find instead of trying to find the WAC or the RCW for compliance. So it's no different than any other policy.
well, basically it makes it more transparent.
Yes, very much.
It makes it more transparent and simplifies it, because if you look at the certificated staff contracts in the RCW, it's about 5 pages, single space, mumbo jumbo, that's very hard to navigate.
Well, and if you scroll down to the legal references, there's just a ton of RCW.
Yeah, I mean, here's our,
You'd have to go through to find all this information, so I think they're just making it easier to find it in one place.
I like it.
Yep.
it's actually, I don't usually say this about WASDA policies, but it's probably one of the better summarized ones I've seen in a long time.
Shall
shall we then move on to policy 4040, public access to district records?
Thank you.
A
So,
few changes in this one.
so this one has quite a few changes. And so WASDA has come out with, we have an existing policy. This is encouraged, it's not required, but I don't know of a district that does not have this policy because it deals with access to public records, district records, excuse me. So they've done quite a bit of work on, I think, trying to include every little detail. So it talks about, in one place in here, let me find it. The one that had the resolution.
Yes.
Yes.
It's in the highlighted.
It's in the highlighted. So this highlighted paragraph, it mentions, because of the tremendous volume and diversity of records continuously generated by public school districts, the board has declared by formal resolution that trying to maintain the current index of all the district records would be impractical, unduly burdensome, ultimately interfere with the operational work of the district. Additionally, the board hereby finds that it would be unduly burdensome to calculate the cost of producing public records given the multitude of different electronic and manual devices and to produce public records, as well as the fluctuating cost of district supplies and labors. We don't have a resolution that I'm aware of that states that. It's not in our existing policy. I don't know if we necessarily need to do a resolution, but that's highlighted and was called out as one of the questions. We get, depending on the topic and time of year, we get public records requests, and they are really take a lot of time and energy. So this one just talks about the access, what we maintain. We only maintain records that are required by the Washington State Records Retention Guide, which we have to follow two. There's the common guide and then the school guide. And they're both, the school guide alone is 99 pages, by the way, if you're ever interested in looking at that. So this does define what records are. You'll see handwriting, typewriting, printing, photocopying, photographing, blah, blah, blah. I would really
What is, so,
request that you take a look at this along with the policy news article, and if you have suggestions, I am more than receptive to.
So this doesn't excuse you from fulfilling
Oh,
public
no.
records requests, though, right? I mean,
Oh,
like,
no,
there's
you have to.
That's what I thought. So that's where the superintendent within state law will
Right.
come up with a policy.
Yep.
So what are we trying, I mean, what does this achieve?
I think what it's trying to do is define, again, what is a public record, recognize that it is really burdensome for school districts, because we do have a procedure. I mean, we do have a charge we can charge. We rarely do, because it's,
It's even more paperwork to
It's
charge.
even more paperwork. It's not worth doing it. And I think it also spells out who the public records officer, that we have one.
Okay.
And you have to have that. You got to have somebody identified as a public records officer,
And who's that?
which is Shannon and then me. So,
To answer Nathan's question, I think it more or less clarifies what the word overburden means.
right.
It's ridiculous. But is this verbatim from the WASDA policy?
This is verbatim.
The definition of school district records does not include records. This makes, I can't get my mind around it.
Yeah, like I said, this is
Full of
not,
negative, yes,
it's not
no.
well written at
maybe.
all, but I just want to show you what,
But what is the volunteers? And are held by does not include, I can't get it. Never mind, but it's just.
I get what you're saying. Does not include records that are not otherwise required.
But yes, but and are held to be by volunteers.
yeah.
So if you went in as a volunteer in a classroom and you were taking some photos or
Correct.
or right, something like that, that's not an official school district record. That's what somebody did as a hobbyist.
But there, I mean, anything that does not include records that are not otherwise required to be retained.
Like I
would be
said,
part of that, so that's what I don't understand.
yeah, it's not, in my opinion, written very well, but I wanted to let you know that here's the new WASDA version.
Well,
And we can, like I said, it's not essential, it's a courage. I think we should have some of it, but we can wordsmith this one to be much, much simpler, in my opinion.
yeah, I would say that in that highlighted thing, I would take out quite a bit of it. Certainly the reference to a formal resolution, because that, the way I read that, that puts the board on the hook to
Yep.
produce the formal resolution that they have. And I have, yeah, which doesn't exist, and I have no intention of us writing one.
And I don't think you need it.
Right, the policy itself would say what our stance is. So I'd be happy to work on editing
Yeah.
this policy.
I'd like to try to trim it down
Yeah.
quite a bit to something that's really just basic.
And I know, I think I'm still confused like the rest of my board colleagues here. So this doesn't excuse us from producing things. So your example, for instance, the volunteer taking pictures on school
That's not a
property.
district record.
But if someone public records requested that, we wouldn't have to provide
Say
it.
it's not our record.
It's not our
Gotcha.
record.
Okay.
We can't request a record that doesn't belong to us.
So does this at all excuse any forms of social media communication from teachers, or because it's out of the school bounds, it's on a separate server, it's not our record? I mean, these are your words. Does that?
However,
Those are not school.
if they use their personal cell phone,
Yeah, a text message is a great example too.
then that does become a record, and they're required to hold on to that or submit it to the district forever and ever.
Okay, so if you're a district employee and you're taking pictures, for instance, as a volunteer in a course room, that's still our.
A volunteer or as a
Well, say
teacher?
I'm a teacher and I volunteer to take pictures of the pumpkin carving night.
If you're
Right.
a volunteer, it doesn't apply. But if
Okay,
you're
but if you're in your
acting in
official
your
capacity-
capacity, then it is.
So if I'm a teacher talking to a parent at night on social media, which I probably shouldn't be doing anyway, but I'm doing anyway, that's a record.
It could become a record.
Okay, so this doesn't excuse us from having
Depends
to
what you're
produce-
talking about.
Gotcha. Well, if I'm talking about my student and your child,
Then
you
it
know.
could become a public
But
record.
it's important to understand that we're not obligated to maintain those records. The kind
that's
that
what this
you're
is
talking
saying
about.
right now.
They may very well be public records, but we can't produce them.
But do we get fined if someone requests them and we don't produce them?
No.
No, you
Okay.
don't. What you want to make sure is when you're doing a published record request is that you explain what you did to search for it, explain what you found, and to the best of your knowledge, these, and sometimes they come back and said, well, did you check, your hard copy file in the storage room? So,
Okay.
you have to make sure you do a thorough job of checking for those records.
Thank you for that clarification.
No, it's,
Super confused.
this is one, again, that's, to be honest, I don't know why they put half this stuff in here. I think they made it even more complicated than our existing. I would simply say, we fulfill access to public records request per Washington State federal law. Here's a definition of a public record. Here is the public officer. And call it good.
Certain advantages.
So, I mean, if you look at our existing, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's bullet points. pretty
No
much.
wills or shalls. We're just.
So,
Yeah, I will volunteer to really look at this carefully.
Thank you.
'Cause now I'm
I think it's more simple to put it in our existing format, which is pretty straight, simple. Boom. Rather than in this convoluted mess with resolutions, which I don't know why you would do that. So,
Your committee makes this. Your committee makes this.
okay.
All right, thank you. Next, policy 6000, program planning, budget preparation, adoption, and implementation, presented by Diane Hall.
That sounds thrilling, I know. So, This is just updating the budget legislative changes that took place back in May. We've already complied with these with the 18-19 budget. So they included language on the annual budget development process, which requires a 4-year budget plan that includes a 4-year enrollment projection. Adds language stating districts are required to electronically publish a notice stating that the district has completed the budget, and the electronic part is new. Before we just had to publish it in the newspaper. Place on file in the district administration office, and that a copy of the budget and a summary of the 4-year budget plan will be furnished to any person who calls upon the district. Standard practice. The board will fix and determine the appropriation from each fund contained in the budget separately. Will by resolution adopt the budget, the 4-year budget plan summary, and the 4-year enrollment projection, and will record its actions in the official minutes. We've already done that. So basically, it's just saying the budget must complete a summary. The completed budget must include a summary of the 4-year budget plan and set forth the complete financial plan. And then, upon completion, the electronic publish notice, and then on the day given in the notice, the board of directors will meet at the time and place designated at the meeting. The board of directors will fix and determine the appropriation the appropriation from each fund contained in the budget separately. Will by resolution adopt the budget, the 4-year plan summary, and the 4-year enrollment projection, and will record its actions in the official minutes. So that's basically what we're doing, is just updating it to the new legislative update.
Nice.
Yeah,
Thank you, Diane.
and we've already done it, so.
That's all, of course, assuming that we know what funds are coming in by July 10th, right?
Well, it's for our budget for the next school year, so we've already done the
Budget.
18-19.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's beyond.
yeah. So that was the 4-year projection we did.
Yeah. No, but I'm just tied up at the July 4th deadline in that. Sometimes that
Yeah,
fund information.
yeah.
There.
And OSPI will extend that a week if the legislature hasn't convened, I guess.
Do you just use past trends for projection of enrollment, or do you look at like current figures? I mean, is it just
For
like
our
a
enrollment?
Yeah.
So what we do, so we get our official count in January, so OSPI gives us our funding, our official funding in January. September through December, we're funded off budget, and then January through August, we're funded off actual. And they'll do adjustments in January for everything, all of the programs. So we kind of look at what January is, and then we go through the process of enrollment. So we do look at history, we look at birth rates, we look at building trends. You know, we kind of look at everything going on in Pullman, anything that we know might be coming up, this why it's hiring. We kind of look at everything. You know, our past 10 years, we've gone anywhere from 160 to we're averaging about 45 a year increase. So that's why we went 22, but it didn't work for us this year.
And then does the state hold, I mean, how do they hold us accountable to that 4-year projection? Do they?
They
at all,
don't.
or- Okay, good.
No.
Because I mean, I was just looking at from your first presentation, the
Yeah.
graph of budget to actual, and it was hugely different.
Yep.
And I was just wondering if there would be any, you know, like if they're going to come down and say, oh, you know, you've projected wrong or something.
No. Mm-mm. They're just projections. You always want to project more conservative, but we wanted to this year try, because of bargaining and everything going on, we wanted to try and get a little bit more accurate based upon the growth that we've been seeing. You know, because our numbers are significantly less per budget, so we are receiving more money.
Mm-hmm.
So this year we really tried to narrow in on what we thought enrollment would be, and it just kind of bit us. Yeah.
The one time.
Yeah, the one time we actually do it, and yeah. But you know, like I said, I'd do it again because that's been our history. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And I'll stay up here for the next one.
Yes, for the next two. Bid requirements.
I know. So this is the purchasing authorization and control, and basically all it's doing is changing the aggregate total of a requisition So approval is required by the board for the purchase of capital outlay items when the aggregate total of a requisition exceeds 5,000. It was previously 20,000. So this was just updated in the Code of Federal Regulations for federal awards. So it's just changing the federal minimum from 20,000 to 5,000. And again, I'll probably be back with this.
So it's lowering.
It's lowering it, but we still have to comply with state regulations too, so whichever is more conservative. So if state is 10,000, we have to do 10,000, we can't do 5,000.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
you're on a roll, Diane.
I know, let's get this going.
Yeah.
Okay, policy 6100, revenues from local, state, and federal. I think I've been here already this year on this policy. So it identifies controls established for the Title I program with regards to purchases and expenditures, in-service trainings, and appropriate documentation to be maintained for accountability purposes. Honestly, we comply with all this. I'm not sure why this was added. The only thing I can think of why WASDA would add this is because somebody wasn't, they were probably supplementing with Title I funds instead of using it what it should have actually been used for. But this is nothing we would, we already comply with this. We would not want to comply with this, and it's our current practice. So that's basically all that was added to this.
Would that have turned up in the state audit? Okay, that's what I thought, yeah, so.
Yeah.
My guess is it turned up in several audits, and then they said this,
Might want to remind everyone.
well, I'm sure what they said is it wasn't clear. And so they said, well, we'll make it clear, and here it is, so.
Yeah.
Wait, you
You
can do that?
Yeah, and now they also did a new Title I methodology that will be audited on, which will be really interesting this year because I've contacted the state auditor's office and OSPI as to how we're supposed to actually do it, and neither one really can tell us how we're supposed to do it. So every school district's just kind of winging it this year.
And we missed the opportunity to hear about bid requirements.
That's what I thought
sorry,
too. Okay. I just lost
Yeah,
consciousness
well,
for a second.
I thought I had
Initially,
these in order here,
yeah.
the number, but.
I'll get through it.
Yeah, usually
Okay.
they are presented in order.
Okay, so 60 to 20 are the bid requirements. And again, this is just language adjusting the federal limits. They added language to ensure the districts take steps to assure that when possible, the districts will use small and minority businesses, women business enterprises, and labor surplus firms.
Whoa.
And they updated the purchasing requirements on procurement using federal funds for goods and services. However, the district is still required to use most restrictive state, federal, or local amounts. So,
Does that number 3, is that more important than cost? I mean, if the large supplier is cheaper, but the local supplier is more
I'm
expensive?
not sure why they did that, because we're going to go with, what is more affordable. But, I guess if they're close, then we would have to look at our options.
Okay.
Yeah. But on the federal procurement, I just kind of wanted to give you, we have a kind of our little cheat sheet on what state bid requirements are, federal requirements and local requirements. And so we have to use, so even if, federal is, say, 10,000 and state is 40,000, we have to use the 40,000 or the 10,000, whichever is less. So I guess that was a bad example because 10,000 is federal. If it's over, and I guess what I'm saying is if it's over 40, we have to get the bid. They're saying, federal saying if it's over 10, then we have to get a bid. State saying if it's over 40, we have to get a bid. So we're going to use the 40.
No, so we don't have to use the 10?
Yeah, yeah. So if it's 10,000 or less, that's a micro purchase for federal. State is 40, and so the federal is going to be 10,000 or less. Small purchases is 10,000 to 250,000 with federal, but it's 10,000 to 75,000 per state. So we're going to use the state.
So depending on which funds we're using depends on what limits we have to
Right.
follow. Okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And so it's really confusing. So I had Jennifer do this cheat sheet so we can and we gave it to all the administrators that order big purchases like FIBA and food service, transportation, and maintenance, so that we can make sure that we're in compliance with this. and special services entitled to, especially with all of our federal grants.
Thank you very much.
Because they change this literally 2 to 3 times a year.
But that doesn't bother you, because you enjoy the challenge.
Well, it's so confusing because people are constantly like, wait, gotta look it up, because they do continually change it, and it goes up. Federal always goes up and down, up and down. It's more than state, it's less than state, so it's really confusing, and especially if it's a micro purchase, small purchase. Yeah, and so it's always nice to have that cheat sheet available so we don't get nailed for it in an audit. Yep.
Very good.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that concludes a series of 6,000 policies. You've never had a bigger night here, Diane, I don't think. All right, there are several informational items. And then, if there are no objections, we will now recess into an executive session for the purpose of evaluating complaints against a public employee, evaluation of personnel, which is reviewing nominations for Excellence in Education Awards, and negotiations. How long, Superintendent Maxwell, will this take?
Negotiations will be 5 minutes. Evaluation of complaints will be probably quickly 10 minutes, and then however long it's going to take for evaluation of personnel, excellence, and education nominations.
How many nominations are there?
And do you know how many nominations?
3 or 4, and I'm very sorry, I forgot to send them all ahead of time.
Oh.
When are they due to be submitted? When do we have to make the nomination? Or are we decide, like,
You
what is
decide.
this? Okay. Are we awarding the award, or are we sending a nomination to someone else to award?
No, you guys select.
Okay, that's what okay.
Yeah.
It's a board award.
Well, I thought that at first, and then I heard, and then I got confused, so I apologize.
Okay, so, well, we'll see where this,
We will be giving the award out in January.
is it, were we planning to do it in either meeting, or is there only one?
There's only one.
December 12th? So is picking the award an action item, or it's not? So we could do an email
You could.
vote on those? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's say a 15-minute executive session.
Shannon, could we do one of those little straw poll things that you send out, like when we have to do dates for meetings or something, and just put put whoever the names are on there, and then we can select like priority or something? I mean, is that hard? If it's hard, don't do it. I mean, if it's super easy, it'd be helpful.
Do you need to just do that then?
Well, would like to
They
be good
still
to
need
see
to
the
get them.
nominations.
They still need to get
Right,
them.
right, but do you want to, are you going to be discussing them at all this evening?
I don't think so.
I don't
Probably
think we
not.
can.
Wow, this is
Yeah.
killing me. I can't do it.
Okay,
And
All
then
right.
you guys can do it.
okay. And so, let us now
Okay.
adjourn into our
Please turn these
executive
microphones
session.
on.
And, yeah, so no business will be,
No